You know the look, that intense, squinty-eyed stare, the weathered grit, and that silent authority that dominates a room without him ever needing to utter a single syllable. For more than 6 decades, Clint Eastwood has basically written the rulebook on American manhood for the silver screen. From the mysterious poncho-wearing drifter in spaghetti westerns to the no-nonsense Inspector Callahan, all the way to his Oscar-winning masterpieces behind the camera. But if you look past the legendary scowl and underneath that dusty serape, there is a whole different side to the story. We are talking about a man with deep passions, specific tastes, and a romantic history that has kept the Hollywood rumour mill churning for ages. Right now, we are going to crack the vault on one of the industry's most notoriously private superstars. We are doing a deep dive into the stories of the captivating women who managed to catch the eye of the man who captured the nation's hearts. And look, these aren't your average starlets. This list represents the absolute peak of glamour spanning different decades and corners of the globe. From sophisticated European icons to homegrown American knockouts, the variety here is honestly stunning. These 7 ladies showcase the complex taste of a guy whose own charisma has stayed relevant way past his prime. So what is the spark? Is it a mutual respect for the craft raw physical chemistry, or just the inevitable gravity between 2 massive stars? Maybe it is that X factor, that indescribable glow you can't fake, but you immediately feel the second someone walks through the door. In this exclusive breakdown, we are ranking the 7 women who genuinely got Clint's blood pumping during his legendary run in Tinseltown. We are covering everything from confirmed flings to whispered scandals, and even the ones he simply worshipped from a distance. These tales reveal a totally different side of Hollywood's quietest icon and the ladies who managed to break through his ironclad defences. So grab your popcorn and get comfortable, because we are about to take a ride through cinema history. This is the feminine mystique that managed to charm the man with no name. And trust me, you are going to want to stick around, because our number 1 pick is a shocker that redefines everything you think you know about Clint. But first, let's kick things off with a silver screen legend who defined glamour and tragedy in equal measure. Number 7, Marilyn Monroe, the ultimate one that got away. Long before the world knew Clint as a Western icon, there was already a blonde bombshell holding the entire world in the palm of her hand. We are talking about Marilyn Monroe, the absolute gold standard of Hollywood allure and American sexuality. She had this mix of fragility and massive star power that ruled the industry back when Eastwood was just a nobody scrapping for uncredited roles. Eastwood reportedly opened up years later, saying Marilyn was the type of woman that haunts a man's memory forever. He dropped this bombshell in a rare moment of openness while discussing the golden age of cinema in an interview. It wasn't just her stunning looks, although that didn't hurt, but the fact that she radiated power and vulnerability all at once. That specific combination is dangerous. Honestly, it is absolutely magnetic. The timeline of their lives created one of the biggest what-if scenarios that movie buffs still argue about in 2026. Back in the early 1950s, Monroe was on top of the world, while Clint was stuck in a cheap contract at Universal doing background work in creature features. They were in the same business, but they might as well have been on different planets. She was the queen of the lot, the brightest light in the sky, and he was just another handsome face hoping not to get cut. Legend has it that a young, hungry Eastwood was so obsessed with Monroe's talent and beauty that he actually wrote a letter to the studio executives practically begging for a shot to be cast in any production alongside her. If that letter was real, it probably ended up in a trash can because he apparently never got a reply. The studio system back then was incredibly strict, and putting a no-name actor next to their biggest cash cow just wasn't in the cards. Clint confessed to a historian later on that he never actually got to meet her face-to-face officially. Those who saw him say his usual stony expression softened up when he added, "Sometimes I wonder if that's for the best." Maybe it is better to keep the fantasy alive rather than meeting the reality, but the timing is what really stings here. Just as Marilyn's life was tragically spiralling to an end in 1962, Eastwood was packing his bags for Italy to film the movie that would make him a god in 1964. They were ships passing in the night during a massive shift in Hollywood culture. She represented the last gasp of the glossy studio era, and he was the face of the gritty, rebellious new wave. He became the symbol of the rougher, darker cinema that took over the late 1960s and changed movies forever. Fans have spent decades imagining what a movie starring both of them would have looked like. Picture her soft, emotional energy clashing with his cold, hard exterior. The sparks would have been flying off the screen. Imagine a western where she plays the saloon singer who finally breaks down the walls of the toughest gunfighter in the territory. The history of film is littered with those tantalising cinematic what-if scenarios that keep movie buffs awake at night. To Eastwood, Marilyn wasn't just a knockout, she was the living embodiment of a golden age that was crumbling into dust right as he was saddling up for his own career takeoff. His respect for her went way deeper than just physical attraction. He really grasped the heavy price she paid for that level of fame and recognised her unique spot in the pantheon of film. However, while Monroe remained that untouchable fantasy, the next name on Clint's hit list represents a totally different ballgame. We are talking about a European deity who allegedly had the nerve to say no thanks to the man with no name face to face. I have 2 children now. One of them is 17 and the other is 13. They are just adorable. They really are wonderful. Number 6, Sophia Loren, the Mediterranean Magnificence. If there was ever a woman capable of standing toe-to-toe with Clint Eastwood's screen presence matching his grit and intensity beat for beat, it is undoubtedly the one and only Sophia Loren. This Italian firecracker clawed her way up from absolute poverty to become a global superstar, bringing with her a kind of raw, sophisticated European heat. Her vibe was completely alien compared to the manufactured, plastic-perfect American pin-up style that dominated the 1950s and 60s. According to the Tinseltown rumour mill, she was also the woman who brought the tough guy to his knees, figuratively, speaking naturally. The most naturally seductive woman walking the earth. That is precisely how Eastwood described Loren during a private chat with director Sergio Leone back when they were shooting The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. And trust me, he wasn't just being polite. That comment was the peak of an infatuation that supposedly kicked off years prior during a destiny-altering run-in at the Cannes Film Festival. Flashback to the mid-60s, both of them were rocketing toward legendary status. Loren already had an Academy Award on her shelf for 2 women. Meanwhile, Eastwood was exploding onto the scene as a worldwide phenomenon thanks to Leone's gritty spaghetti westerns. The French Riviera served as the ultimate romantic setting for a collision between these 2 titans, whose charisma didn't need subtitles to be understood. Insiders who witnessed the scene claim Clint made his move with that classic, understated cool he was famous for. A private table was booked, the expensive champagne started flowing. The conversation was as smooth as the Mediterranean wind drifting through the hotel terrace. But the aftermath, that's pure Hollywood mythology. One camp claims Loren let him down easy, insisting her heart was already taken by producer Carlo Ponti, the man she stayed married to until he passed away in 2007. But the other side argues that the magnetic pull between them was way too strong to ignore. Rumours persist that it sparked a short white-hot fling that both of them swore to take to the grave. The real story is locked away with Clint and Sophia, and neither one has ever cracked under pressure during interviews. That radio silence has only poured gasoline on the fire, turning this potential power couple into one of the industry's greatest unconfirmed legends. What makes the link between Eastwood and Loren so captivating isn't just that they were 2 incredibly good-looking people. It is the fact that their career paths mirrored each other in such a fascinating way. They both shattered the sex symbol mould to become critically acclaimed actors and eventually turned into formidable directors in their own right. Both of them brought a level of authentic grit to their roles that set them miles apart from the polished studio system robots of their time. And they both navigated fame with a quiet dignity that transformed them from mere movie stars into permanent cultural icons. Clint actually touched on this once, noting there is something about European actresses of that era. He loved that they didn't mask their strength with fake sweetness. They owned their power, their sensuality, and their sharp intellect. That kind of raw honesty is magnetic. Even though they bumped into each other at festivals and galas over the next few decades, Eastwood and Loren never shared the screen. It goes down as another tragic entry in cinema's book of missed connections. You can only hallucinate about the screen melting from the heat they would have generated, his silent, stoic masculinity clashing with her explosive passion. Instead, we are left with nothing but whispered theories and tantalizing possibilities. A fleeting moment in time when two cinematic giants orbited each other before blasting off on their separate trajectories into history. Now, while Loren was the epitome of Italian elegance and artistic prestige, the next lady on Clint's hit list offered a totally different flavour. A vision of French liberation that had the entire Western world under her spell during the swinging 60s. That is fine. You have been studying it. No, you have completely forgotten everything by now. Number 5. Brigitte Bardot, the ultimate French fantasy. She is the reason every guy in America decided to grow a mustache. That witty remark, often credited to Clint Eastwood in a 1970s interview, barely hints at his massive crush on the French bombshell Brigitte Bardot. This blonde hurricane didn't just star in movies, she scandalised and rewrote the rules of European cinema, representing a brand new shift in the culture. She owned a raw, unapologetic sexuality that completely smashed the prudish morals of the time, effectively crowning Bardot as the undisputed queen and ultimate icon of the sexual revolution. For a guy like Eastwood, who made his name by flipping the script on what it meant to be a man, Bardot's gutsy, no-holds-barred attitude toward her art and public image definitely resonated deep down. Just like Clint, she was busy rewriting the cultural rulebook. She was just coming at it from the totally opposite angle. While he was tearing down the old-school idea of the flawless male hero, she was out there obliterating those stiff, ladylike stereotypes of being proper and restrained. If you believe the breathless reports from the French tabloids back in the day, this shared rebellious streak might have sparked a hush-hush rendezvous in Paris right around the late 1960s. That alleged hookup has basically morphed into one of the greatest unverified myths in cinema history. Picture it, the titan of American film and the goddess of European cinema colliding in the City of Light, right when they were both absolutely untouchable. One veteran Parisian paparazzo spilled the tea in his memoir, claiming there was a specific suite booked at the Ritz super private and incredibly discreet. The story goes that they checked in separately and checked out separately, but for a solid 48 hours, the two hottest stars on the planet were sharing the same air. Naturally, the hotel staff had been sworn to absolute secrecy, treating the whole affair like a state secret. Not a single photo of this meetup ever surfaced, and their reps have denied it for decades, but the rumour refuses to die simply because the idea of them together is just too perfect a contrast to ignore. You have her fiery, expressive emotion clashing with his stone-cold stoicism, her European free-spiritedness against his rugged American frontier grit. Now, what we do know for a fact is that both of these legends have gone on record expressing serious professional respect for each other's craft. Word is, Bardot was a huge fan of Eastwood's work in the Leon Westerns, loving that distinctive visual flair and his less is more acting style. On the flip side, whenever European cinema came up, Clint spoke highly of Bardot's killer performances in movies like Contempt and Viva Maria. Legend has it Eastwood once told film critic Judith Crist, quote, "What Bardot did was brave," while they were chatting about international superstars. He noted that she didn't just portray these sultry characters, she threw her entire being into those roles. She didn't care about the backlash, consequences be damned, and that requires a level of guts that most actors will never even get close to. The way their careers mirrored each other adds a whole other layer of fascination to their connection. Both of them basically walked away from the camera while they were still on top, with Bardot ditching Hollywood completely in 1973 to fight for animal rights. Meanwhile, Eastwood slowly shifted gears into the director's chair, becoming incredibly picky about when he'd actually step in front of the lens. It seems they both realised that being famous just for their looks was a trap, so they went looking for deeper ways to use their talent and their star power. So whether that secret tryst in the Parisian hotel room ever actually went down or not, the link between Eastwood and Bardot is still a captivating cultural crossroads. We are talking about two giants who completely rewrote the rulebook for their respective movie traditions. Possibly pulled toward one another because they recognised a fellow rebel who wasn't afraid to smash through boundaries. But hey, while Bardot was the face of European freedom, our next lady on the list embodied something that was 100% homegrown American. She brought a dangerous hip-swiveling heat that injected pure rock and roll adrenaline straight onto the silver screen. Number 4, Anne-Margaret, the ultimate fiery temptation. You know, some sparks fly because opposites attract, but other times it's all about recognising a kindred spirit across the room. When you dig into Clint Eastwood's reported obsession with Anne-Margaret, it becomes pretty obvious what pulled him toward that stunning Swedish-American bombshell was the undeniable vibe that she was in so many ways the female version of himself. She was dangerous, totally untamed and pulsing with a raw energy that standard Hollywood roles just couldn't bottle up. One insider put it bluntly, she was wild, a redhead, and she oozed danger, exactly Clint's type, revealed a veteran assistant director who worked alongside Eastwood during his rocket ride to superstardom in the late 1960s. Apparently, Clint was obsessed with her Viva Las Vegas phase and tried his hardest to cast her in several of his westerns. And honestly, if you look at the calendar, the timing makes absolute perfect sense. Right when Anne-Margaret was setting movie screens on fire next to Elvis Presley in 1964's Viva Las Vegas, Eastwood was busy redefining the Western anti-hero in Sergio Leone's groundbreaking flicks. Both of them brought a brand new flavour to the screen, highly sexual, morally grey, and crackling with a fierce intensity that made every other actor around them look boring, stiff, and totally old-fashioned by comparison. What makes Eastwood's pursuit of Anne-Margaret so interesting is what it reveals about his own genius. He knew exactly what made his movies tick. Those westerns that put him on the map weren't just about quick-draw gunfights and rough frontier justice. No, they were all about building this slow, simmering tension that would eventually explode into sudden violence. And seriously, who better to crank up that tension than an actress who looked like she was hiding a volcano of passion just barely held back beneath the surface? According to a casting director from back then, Clint pushed incredibly hard to get her on board for High Plains Drifter. He had this specific vision of her playing the saloon woman with a dark past. But the studio suits pushed back hard because they wanted someone safer, more conventionally pretty, and a lot less dangerous. Eventually, Clint caved, though let's just say he wasn't exactly jumping for joy about the compromise. Meanwhile, Anne-Margaret was deep in the trenches, waging her own war against Tinseltown's narrow-minded expectations. After cementing her status as the ultimate bombshell in hits like Bye Bye Birdie and Viva Las Vegas, she was itching to show she had real acting chops, a journey that would eventually land her Oscar nods for Carnal Knowledge and Tommy. Accepting a gig as the girl in a western even, with a heavyweight like Eastwood calling the shots, could have easily looked like a career backslide at that specific moment in time. The professional paths of these two powerhouses would keep circling each other's orbits all through the 1970s, never quite colliding. Both were busy smashing the boxes. People put them in, her proving she could handle heavy drama, and him showing the world he was a visionary director with a unique eye, not just a cowboy. They were also wrestling with their own private demons, from her tough battle with the bottle to his famously messy romantic life. There was serious mutual respect there. A producer who worked with both legends once noted they saw a reflection of themselves in one another. That same fierce intensity and a total refusal to let Hollywood dictate who they were supposed to be. But hey, sometimes respecting someone's grind means letting them walk their own road without you. The Clint and Anne-Margaret saga remains one of the industry's most fascinating what-ifs. You can only dream about the fireworks they would have set off on screen. His stone-faced, minimalist, cool clashing perfectly with her electric, expressive energy. Instead, we are left with a relationship built on admiration from a distance, two blazing comets that pass tantalizingly close without ever actually crashing into each other. But while Anne-Margaret was all about that fiery American allure, the next name on Clint's list brought a totally different vibe to the table. We are talking about a statuesque icon of female power who would eventually share the frame with him in one of the most slept-on westerns of the 1990s. You know how it is. Fame comes in waves, spurts, and then it fades away. Number 3. Sharon Stone, the ultimate dangerous blonde. By the time the early 1990s rolled around, Clint Eastwood had fully morphed from a movie star into a prestigious director, racking up critical love and Oscar buzz for masterpieces like Bird and Unforgiven. It was right at this game-changing moment in his career that he crossed paths with an actress who was riding her own rocket ship to the top. Sharon Stone, who was fighting tooth and nail to prove she was more than just eye candy after her legendary star-making performance in Basic Instinct. Their professional lives finally synced up on The Quick and the Dead, that stylized 1995 Western, helmed by Sam Raimi. Even though Eastwood wasn't sitting in the director's chair this time, he stepped into a supporting role as court a gunfighter turned preacher. While Stone wasn't just the leading lady, she was calling the shots as a co-producer, which was a pretty rare power move for an actress back in those days. That shared experience of manoeuvring through Hollywood's tricky power structures apparently forged a bond between them, one that went a little deeper than just professional politeness. There was definitely a spark, a crew member on set whispered. You would catch them huddled up between takes, cracking up at inside jokes like old friends. Stone would casually touch his arm when they chatted, not overtly flirting, maybe, but looking extremely comfortable in his space. And Clint, a guy who usually stays in his own bubble on set, actually seemed to go out of his way to find her. Naturally, the tabloid vultures of the era pounced on this chemistry, spinning wild yarns about a scorching hot affair between the two superstars. The grocery store checkout lines were full of headlines like Clint's new quick draw, Sharon Stone lassos aging cowboy, and Basic Instinct on the range Sharon, and Clint's secret fling all through filming and release. What made the gossip so juicy was exactly how the stars played it, offering knowing smirks and non-denial denials that did absolutely nothing to put out the fire. In fact, they just poured gas on it. When asked point blank about their chemistry at a press junket, Stone reportedly teased, I admire Clint's directing style, followed by a pregnant pause and a raised eyebrow that had the whole room erupting in knowing laughter. For his part, Eastwood stuck to his signature stoicism. Though insiders noted he got a lot more animated whenever the topic turned to Stone's work on the movie. She has got good instincts, he told American Film magazine, dishing out a rare compliment. Not just as an actress, but about what actually plays on screen. She really gets the power of restraint. Coming from the undisputed king of understatement, that word restraint carried some serious weight. For Eastwood to praise another actor's grasp of subtlety was basically the highest honour, especially for someone whose claim to fame in Basic Instinct was anything but subtle. What made the potential link between Eastwood and Stone so fascinating was how they stood as icons for two totally different eras of Hollywood sex appeal. He had defined rugged masculinity throughout the 1960s and 1970s. She was rewriting the rules of female power for the 1990s. Both of them brought a dangerous edge to their on-screen allure. His came from a quiet, simmering menace, while hers was all about overt, in-your-face aggression. One director who managed to survive working with both superstars observed that they are practically cut from the exact same cinematic cloth. Neither one plays it safe. Both are more than willing to be disliked if that is what the gritty truth of the role demands. And folks, let me tell you, that is exceedingly rare, especially for A-listers, who are primarily known for their stunning good looks. Most of the beautiful people in Tinseltown are desperate to be adored by the audience, but Clint and Sharon, they are perfectly content with being feared instead. Now, whether that electric connection ever moved beyond deep professional admiration and some mild on-set flirtation remains a secret known only to the stars themselves. But what is crystal clear is that their time working together on the set of The Quick and the Dead created enough sparks to light up the Hollywood rumour mill for months on end. And it honestly left audiences wondering what kind of magic might have happened if these two dangerous blondes had shared a little more screen time together. However, while Sharon Stone represented Eastwood's contemporary Hollywood era, our next subject embodied the quintessence of old-school Hollywood sex appeal in its most legendary form. You are a nice-sized lady and all that. but you know you are not exactly what I expected. She famously recalled the encounter. But moving on to number 2, we have Raquel Welch, the ultimate sex symbol in Hollywood's glittering constellation of stars. Few have ever shone with the blinding intensity of Ms. Welch. From the second she emerged from those prehistoric seas rocking that iconic fur bikini in 1 million years BC, Welch instantly established herself. She solidified her status as perhaps the ultimate sex symbol of the late 1960s, a heavy title she would hold on to well into the 1970s and way beyond. For a guy like Clint Eastwood, who was himself defining a new kind of rugged masculine appeal during that same era, Welch reportedly represented the ultimate feminine counterpart. Clint actually once admitted that Welch was the specific reason he agreed to take on certain roles. Just to get on the same set with her, revealed a long-time camera operator who worked on several Eastwood productions back in the day. Nothing serious ever came of it that I know of, but their paths crossed often enough at industry events, and you could practically see the admiration in his eyes. The man would actually lose that famous stoic Eastwood cool for a split second whenever she entered the room. What makes this particular attraction so fascinating to analyse is how it represents the intersection of two parallel Hollywood phenomena. Just as Eastwood was redefining the American male through his silent, morally ambiguous characters, Welch was simultaneously transforming the concept of the Hollywood sex symbol. She brought a fierce independence and a smouldering intensity that set her miles apart from the more naive bombshells of the previous decade. According to deep industry insiders, Eastwood made several attempts to develop projects that would star both him and Welch throughout the 1970s. One particularly intriguing concept was a grit-filled western that would have cast Raquel as a tough frontier woman. She would be seeking revenge for her murdered husband, with Clint playing the gunslinger she hires to help her, only for them to become romantically entangled along the way. That script actually existed, confirmed a producer who was very active during that golden period. It was titled something like Blood Moon, or maybe Blood on the Moon. It came heartbreakingly close to getting made around 1975. The studio heads absolutely loved the concept. Eastwood and Welch together would have guaranteed massive box office gold, but scheduling conflicts kept pushing it back, and eventually the moment just passed. Of course, those scheduling conflicts may have been complicated by some messy personal factors as well. Both of these stars were navigating incredibly complicated romantic lives during this specific period. Eastwood was in the thick of his relationship with actress Sondra Locke, while Welch was dealing with her second marriage to producer Patrick Curtis. The professional opportunity to work together kept slipping through their fingers as their personal lives followed wildly different trajectories. What is particularly notable about Eastwood's reported attraction to Welch was how it represented a deep appreciation for a woman who, much like himself, had transcended initial stereotyping to forge a substantive career. Just as he had moved beyond being merely the man with no name to become a significant filmmaker, Welch had fought tooth and nail to be taken seriously as an actress, despite the constraints of her sex symbol status. I really think what interested Clint about Raquel was not just the obvious physical appeal, suggested a director who had the chance to work with both stars separately. It was the fact that she was fighting the exact same battle he was constantly trying to be seen as more than just a physical typecast. They were both trapped in golden cages of their own making in a way that creates a unique kind of understanding that goes far beyond simple physical attraction. Though they never shared the silver screen, Eastwood and Welch remain linked in Hollywood history as the definitive male and female sex symbols of their era. These were two icons whose smouldering intensity and undeniable physical presence fundamentally changed what audiences expected from their leading men and women. Their unconsummated professional collaboration represents one of cinema's great might-have-beens, a pairing that could have generated enough on-screen heat to literally melt the celluloid. But while Raquel Welch represented the absolute pinnacle of conventional Hollywood beauty, our final entry on Clint's list embodies something else entirely. We are talking about a formidable talent whose fierce intelligence and take-no-prisoners attitude created a totally different kind of attraction. We used to open each week's segment with that authentic footage, setting the stage for the drama. So we got the team together to dig deep into the untold story of the one and only Faye Dunaway. When you talk about true alphas colliding in the history of Tinseltown, very few actresses have ever combined drop-dead looks, raw talent and pure willpower quite like Faye Dunaway. From blowing everyone away in Bonnie and Clyde to her absolute powerhouse Oscar-winning performance in Network. Dunaway cemented her status as way more than just a pretty face. She was a force of nature whose intensity, both on and off the camera, became total Hollywood folklore. For a guy like Clint Eastwood, who knows a thing or two about stubborn determination, that specific mix of beauty and razor-sharp intellect was reportedly impossible to ignore. One old-school veteran producer described Eastwood and Dunaway perfectly, two absolute alphas of 1970s cinema. The story of their first legendary meeting has turned into one of those classic Hollywood tales that gets told over and over again, mostly because it perfectly captures exactly what made their dynamic so incredibly fascinating to watch. It all went down at a dinner party at director Arthur Penn's place sometime back in the mid-1970s. You had Eastwood and Dunaway both absolutely peaking in their careers and influence sitting right across the table from one another. What started off as your standard polite chit-chat reportedly spiraled into a heated, full-blown debate about the movie business method acting and what artists actually owe their audiences. They were going at it for hours, according to an actress who was there watching the whole thing. She said they weren't exactly fighting, but they were challenging each other intellectually in a way that felt totally electric. It was the kind of scene you simply couldn't look away from. For those two, everyone else in the room basically just faded into the background. Hollywood law says that as the verbal sparring got more intense, another guest leaned over and whispered to Penn, asking if they should separate them before things got ugly. Penn reportedly just grinned and shot back, "Are you kidding me?" Clint is absolutely loving every single second of this. What made this clash so magnetic wasn't just that you had two gorgeous people arguing, though, that helps. It was that it was a meeting of true equals in an industry where that kind of parity between male and female stars was almost non-existent. Dunaway was not even slightly intimidated by Eastwood's massive fame or his legendary intensity. Instead, she met him right there on his level and matched him with plenty of her own fire. The director who worked with both of them explained that Clint was used to being the biggest, toughest presence in any room he walked into. But suddenly, he is sitting across from someone just as strong-willed, just as talented, and just as stubborn about backing down. That isn't threatening to a guy like Eastwood. It is intoxicating. Now, even though no real romantic relationship ever developed since they were both seeing other people at the time, the connection was undeniable. That mutual professional respect and personal fascination apparently stuck around all through the late 1970s and into the early 1980s. Both Eastwood and Dunaway reportedly looked into a bunch of different projects that would have finally brought them together on the big screen. They looked at everything from crime thrillers to heavy romantic dramas, but there was one script called Deadlock that nearly got greenlit around 1982. A screenwriter from back in the day revealed the plot would have cast them as opposing attorneys who start having an affair, even though they are representing opposite sides of a high-stakes murder case. Word is the chemistry during the test readings was absolutely off the charts. But in classic Hollywood fashion, creative differences between Clint and the studio suits ultimately killed the project. What makes the whole Eastwood and Dunaway dynamic so interesting is how it represents attraction in its most complex, layered form. We aren't just talking physical here, it was deeply intellectual and artistic too. In Dunaway, Eastwood reportedly saw more than just a knockout woman. He recognised a kindred spirit whose obsession with her craft and refusal to compromise mirrored his own filmmaking style. They are both total perfectionists, noted a cinematographer who had the chance to work with each star separately. Both of them were willing to do 30 takes just to nail exactly the right look and the right feeling. They were completely uncompromising about their creative vision. You put them together and you would either get the greatest movie ever made or the entire set would implode from the pressure. Maybe a bit of both. Even though they never actually shared the screen, Eastwood and Dunaway remain linked in film history as the definitive figures of 1970s American cinema. These were artists who brought a whole new level of intensity and complexity to their performances during a totally pivotal era in Hollywood history. Their unconsummated collaboration represents arguably the most intellectually intriguing of all of Eastwood's reported attractions. It was a meeting of minds just as much as hearts. But looking at the women who shaped a legend, what does Clint's list actually reveal? What can we really learn from digging into these 7 women who reportedly captured Clint Eastwood's imagination throughout his career? Beyond the obvious appeal of these incredibly talented, stunning actresses, his choices actually reveal something way deeper about attraction, compatibility, and how Hollywood itself evolved over the decades of Eastwood's remarkable run. First off, you have to notice the sheer variety in his choices. From Marilyn Monroe's vulnerable sensuality to Dunaway's fierce intelligence, from Bardot's European liberation to Raquel Welch's all-American voluptuousness, Eastwood's taste covers a massive spectrum of feminine energy. This really reflects his own versatility as both an actor and a director, and it serves as a reminder that attraction is rarely just one-dimensional. Secondly, looking at the big picture, all 7 of these ladies share a specific set of vibes, even though they were all totally unique in their own right. Every single one of them brought a raw kind of fire and truth to their roles, pushing back against the system and proving they were serious artists, not just pretty faces to stare at. These connecting threads prove that for a guy like Clint, while a hot look might catch his eye first, it is the grit and substance underneath that actually keeps him interested. He has said it himself plain as day, stating, "I have always been attracted to strong women." Clint dropped that gem during a super rare candid moment in a Directors Guild interview, admitting that sentiment goes for his movies and his real life. We are talking about women who have a plan and are not scared to chase it down. That kind of laser focus is totally irresistible to him. But here is the really juicy part. A lot of these women were basically female versions of different sides of Clint's own personality. Take Faye Dunaway, for example. She perfectly matched his crazy artistic intensity and his obsession with getting everything absolutely perfect. Then you have Raquel Welch, whose path from pin-up girl to respected actor totally paralleled his own. And Sharon Stone, who reflected his fearless drive to take risks and play those dark, morally grey characters. In her own unique way, every one of them was channeling the feminine energy of the exact same qualities Eastwood carried himself. It hits on a deep truth about chemistry. Maybe we aren't just looking for our other half, but looking for someone who shines our own soul back at us in a different package. For a Hollywood legend whose entire career was built on dissecting exactly what it means to be a tough American man, it makes total sense that he would be absolutely obsessed with women who were busy rewriting the rulebook on femininity during their own eras. For fans who remember the good old days, Clint's list brings back major nostalgia for a time when movie stars had real weight and presence, something you barely see in the celebrity world of 2026. These 7 icons represented way more than just beauty. They radiated a specific kind of grown-up feminine power that you could feel through the screen. They were confident without being fragile, incredibly sexy without being cheap, and serious about their art without acting like total snobs. You have to admit there was just some kind of unexplainable magic about the actresses coming up in that generation. One film historian put it perfectly when breaking down Hollywood's golden and silver ages, noting the unique pressure cooker they lived in. They rose up in a brutal industry that tried to exploit them at every turn, yet gave them the chance to rise above it all through pure talent and an iron will. The women who survived that grinder didn't just end up as movie stars, they cemented themselves as absolute cultural icons. Maybe the reason Eastwood's crushes are so fascinating is because they come from a guy who has seen the good, the bad and the ugly of Hollywood for over 70 years. From his start as a lowly contract player to his current reign as the industry's elder statesman, Eastwood has watched the fame machine operate from the front row. So when he points out which women actually stood out amidst all that fake glitter and noise, his opinion carries some serious weight. At the end of the day, Clint Eastwood's roster of dream-leading ladies tells us just as much about him as it does about the actresses themselves. It uncovers a complex, deep man who truly prizes strength being real and having the guts to be artistic. And let's be honest, those are the exact same qualities he has shown the world throughout his own legendary career. And really, when you get down to it, isn't that the most captivating quality a person can have?